Hello, welcome. My name is Darin Reffitt, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing Excellence with Guidewire Software, as well as the VP of e-Learning for IASA. And I'd like to welcome you to IASA's new Virtual Leadership Series, which we're creating in response to what all of us, both in the insurance industry and outside, are experiencing with organizational change, very rapid organizational change with COVID-19. I'm joined today by Cathy Ellwood, the president of Ellwood Enterprises and a leadership expert who is very familiar with IASA, and Kerry Crockett, our executive director, who have agreed to join us to have a conversation today as our first in a series where we're going to talk about navigating change and how companies are responding to what's going on and how they're having to react to situations they never necessarily anticipated. So let's jump right in. I'm going to start with a question about, Kerry, Cathy, what are you seeing with how this is changing organizations and what they're doing and what they're having to do on a day-to-day basis? Why don't we start, Cathy, with you?
Okay, well, the big deal, right, is this is a crisis. This is something that we've never seen before. And I think what I've seen in terms of companies, it's all over the board. And it really varies. And part of the reason I think that it does is that some are just a lot more prepared for this than others. Some organizations have never had any kind of work from home whatsoever, while others, like some carriers that have gone to digital transformations or in the process of doing so, they're really ready, and it's not that big of a deal, although they're having to adjust some procedures. What I find that's most interesting, though, is that this whole thing is testing the culture of the organization. It's testing who are they really? What are their values? What does the leadership really stand for? What is important to them? Is it the bottom line and getting back to business as normal? Or is it the employees, their health, their well-being, their customers? And I mean, you can't make this up. Whatever they do, the message that they send, what they're doing for their people, how they show them that they care, that says a lot about who the organization is. And in fact, I was talking to a very large carrier just the other day about how they readjusted their priorities. And I was fascinated about their view of the world. And they said, we know it's going to be really hard for the next several months. We know that. We are not going to use the same yardstick for measuring performance. Everybody is going to be okay. We're not creating additional stress. We're just not going to do it. We're all in this together and we're going to figure it out.
It definitely changes your view of your organization when you get to that point of the rubber hitting the road, I guess is the expression, where you say, do they really believe in their core values? I will share with you at Guidewire, we had a pretty positive experience because our CEO was very quick to respond very early in March, and we started all working from home. But then they took that next step and said, you know what, not everyone works from home, and we want to make sure everyone can do this effectively. We're going to give everyone a $500 allowance to go out and do what you need to get your home office in shape to ride through this and be effective. And that felt really powerful. It really felt like they cared,
Yeah, I agree.
Kerry, what are you hearing from her?
I was just going to say, I agree. I think that that's what we're seeing the most as I'm speaking with other leaders, both in this industry and outside of our industry, which is they're really having to change how they're leading their teams and how they're managing their teams. I think things that would have naturally occurred if you're face-to-face in an office setting have taken on a new dynamic. And so leaders are having to sort of take that extra step to think about how their teams are performing individually, both mentally and physically. Do they have the resources they need? Do they have the equipment that they need, the technology that they need? Are they managing stress well? Are they managing their home environment well? Those are things that typically, we haven't had to think about previously to that level. But when we're finding that our teams are now working remotely, new challenges are being presented that we hadn't had to give thought to before. And so leaders are sort of having to step up to a different degree and really take that extra step and check in on their teams just to make sure that they're able to manage that stress level and manage distractions that are happening that, again, haven't been needed to be considered previously.
Absolutely. So physical and mental health, I mean, this is something that we care about. One interesting thing I've noticed is, there's kind of a double-edged sword at work, right? Because we're all of a sudden working in this new environment and we're working from home and we have families and kids running around, right? But at the same time, I'm experiencing a whole new level of engagement with my coworkers. Today, I watched a ballerina dancing behind her mother, and I got to know her twins. It was brief, but it's really creating connections at a time where we need more connections more than ever, because we're not really getting them in our normal life, with our neighbors or our friends.
But and that's a good thing, because
Absolutely.
it's forcing us to be more human, and it's forcing us to get to know our co-workers first, right? The other thing that I've seen organizations, some are doing, which I think from a leadership perspective is really key. Not only are you trying to get to know your people better, making sure that they're okay, that they're taken care of, that they have the tools that they need. You've also got to think about the fact that, not everybody is technology literate. Not everybody is up to speed on how to use all this technology. So some of the people are going to be able to adapt and be flexible and be nimble and quick. And some, including the leaders themselves, may not be used to operating alone. I know a lot of people have assistants, and their assistant isn't here to do all that work for them, right? The other thing I think that we have to think about is that some organizations have partners who are shut down. They can't get into the buildings that they're, normally used to working in. So this is stopping business as normal, right? So what do you do with this time when you can't do the job that you think you're supposed to be doing? Some leaders have, really taken it upon themselves to step back and think about, what are the opportunities that this can potentially create for us? What should we be doing 3 years out, 2 years out? If you think about digital transformation, is this not the time to be thinking about, should we be doing this? Should we be thinking about it? I mean, quite candidly, I look at some of the carriers and I think, you've always wanted to cost justify everything, right? But maybe what we need to be doing need to be doing is thinking about modernizing the environment that we're working in so we can be more prepared for when disasters like this do come. It's not a question of if, I think sometimes it might be a question of when.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and so this might be an opportunity for us to say, what can we do differently that's going to create opportunities to add value to customers? And that's most important, to make it better for us to work together as a team, and also to reduce expenses. But the problem, I guess, on the one hand, there's opportunity, but on the other hand, there's some challenges, because some people think that because you work at home, you're not working all the time, or that means you get to work 24/7.
Yep.
So it's a double-edged sword, like, some people say.
Absolutely. And Kerry, what are you hearing from your contacts in regards to these opportunities?
I'm hearing sort of similar along the lines to what Cathy was mentioning. One case in particular stands out. Speaking with someone, and they were talking about the fact that they're currently, or right before this crisis, they were actually expanding their physical space because they had outgrown where they were. And now that they're forced to work from home, they're taking a step back and reassessing that plan and sort of thinking, so if we're able to carry on business remotely like this, do we really need that physical space? Are there ways that we can sort of take another look at our teams and determine this group can work remotely, but we really need this particular process in a physical environment? So for them, they're actually stepping back and reassessing those types of things. And in the long run, it will likely be a cost savings for them. So I think it's creating those types of opportunities as well that when they weren't forced into that situation, they didn't have to think about it. But now that they are, they're sort of expanding that and sort of taking it to another level. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that to come.
You know what I think is kind of funny? I've worked with a lot of carriers for a long time, and one of the biggest challenges leaders often say is, we want our people to be more flexible. We want our people to respond differently to change. We want them to be nimble, quick. Well, guess what? Here's the opportunity, because they have no choice.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
everybody is having to do it. And I think that means having to also to relax some of the bureaucracy, the procedures, the old rules that really didn't really matter anyway. And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see leaders rethinking how they look at performance. Are you going to have to start delegating differently? Are you going to have to manage it differently? Like, think about the manager. We were talking about this the other night when we were getting ready for this call. How are you going to micromanage when you can't see them?
Right.
I mean, think about it. You can't walk to their cubes or their offices and see what they're doing now.
Well, I saw a great statistic that showed that I guess people are staying logged into their VPNs. I believe the statistic was 3 hours longer on average than they used to. The people who were working from home are staying on longer. And it's almost like we feel like we need to justify that we are in fact working. And there's a lot of that blurring of those lines, right?
But does it make them any more productive?
As someone who works from home all the time, I saw a great tweet recently that said, just remember, you're not working from home right now. You're at home working. And it's a very different thing. I've had people say to me, well, your life must not have changed at all because you always work from home. And I'm like, well, yeah, but your life has changed, and that's changed my life, because conversations that would normally happen very quickly on the phone, you're now scheduling a half-hour Zoom meeting with me. So my calendar is more full than it's ever been before. And I'm hearing that from pretty much everyone.
Yeah, and I think the piece that goes along with that is stress, right? It's not only stress from those who are now working from home, that's a new situation for them where they have, additional things to think about. We know that a lot of the schools are closed. People are having to homeschool their children, and they have that additional stress. They're trying to figure out a new schedule for themselves, how they're going to work in their home life with their work life. Their hours are being extended. As we all know, when we work from home, we work longer hours. So I think we have to, as leaders, we have to think about how that additional stress is impacting our teams and impacting the work that they're doing, and thinking about burnout and thinking about ways that we can be supportive of them, whether it's adjusting their schedules and being a little more flexible, making sure that we're checking in with them more frequently to make sure that they have what they need in terms of resources and moral support, making sure that as a team, we're all collectively reaching out and sort of embracing each other to see how we can share some of that load, because some people may have children they're having homeschool, others may not have children, et cetera. So I think everybody's workload is changing, and how we're working is very different as well. So I think collectively, not just from a leadership standpoint, but collectively as teams, we all need to embrace that and make sure that we're embracing each other and really checking in with each other to make sure that we're distributing that load a little bit more evenly and working together to manage stress on a different level.
So there's, you raise a really important point. And I think when we're dealing with a change of this magnitude, we need to keep in mind that anytime we're under stress, people fear the worst. Mm-hmm. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about, we look at the unemployment, right? So, to the extent that organizations can be transparent, mm-hmm. with where are we as a company, we can't say whether or not we're going to be able to keep everybody. Mm-hmm. You can't promise the future if you can't, but to the extent that you can be transparent and let people know and do everything that you can to mitigate the concern. Am I going to have a job tomorrow? And, what is going on? And if you don't know, it's okay to say that. It's okay to ease their fears by being candid up front. The beautiful part about the industry, and I've always loved this about our industry, is that it is heavily regulated, and we have to be there to fill the needs that people have with respect to their claims. So, it's something that people, depend upon. So, losing your job is going to depend a lot on the financial performance of the company. But right now, you know, a lot of it's up to the team to perform, to be there, the leaders to share with the teams what they can, what they know, and do everything that they can to make them as productive as they need to be.
Mhm.
And one way I think to do that is to make sure that they have the resources, that's the technology, the processes, that they check in with them. I mean, like, do you need anything? Do you need anything from me? What can I do for you? And this goes for the leaders too. You know, sometimes the leaders don't know how to leverage all this technology. You know, so it's a two-way street here, I think.
Well, that's a great point, and actually, that's a nice lead in because we're just about at our 15-minute mark. Our next session is going to be on different ways of working. How do we, you know, deal with these kinds of changes and deal with whether you're working remotely or whether you're managing a team, whether you're reporting into someone who micromanages you. There's all these different things that are happening to us. So that's going to be our next session. And with that, I'm going to just ask for a quick, you know, 30-second close. Kerry, anything you'd like to share?
Sure. I just would say to all the leaders out there, from all the way up from large companies down to those that have one or two folks that might work in a small office, just remember that we're all in this together. Just remember that everybody is feeling the same amount of stress. Everybody's faced with the same types of challenges. And I think if we can take a minute and a deep breath and be empathetic with each other and try to relate to the fact that we all have the same challenges, I think it's going to make this go a long way for all of us.
Cathy?
I think Kerry said it best. I think reaching out and connecting, keeping in touch, and showing people who you are, what your company stands for, showing that you care for each individual that's on the line, and showing them that you care about the customers way above, over and above the bottom line profits. I think you're going to have loyalty forever if you can do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for joining us and sharing your valuable time. We'll look forward to joining you again next week, where, as I said, we're going to be talking about different ways of working. If you have any questions that you'd like us to address, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them on our YouTube channel or email us at info@iasa.org, and we will definitely respond to those questions and comments. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we appreciate your time.